Good morning, everybody.
Good
Morning,
morning. ma'am.
How are you
Good
all
morning.
doing today?
We are doing fine,
We are
thank you.
tired. I'm very tired.
Oh dear, you're very tired, Priscilla.
Madam, we are tired. Production participation.
And
And
there's
yeah,
so much
easy.
to do, right?
I
Yeah,
feel
easy.
Just hang in there. We are almost through with the semester.
Semester is really stressful.
I can imagine. Just hang in there and try and take things a bit easy, okay? Because you can't risk your health. We are almost there. This is the 7th week, right?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
So,
7th
so hang in there, okay?
Okay, ma'am.
All right. So today we are continuing with our study of Henrik Ibsen's A Doll's House. And our objectives for today are to look at characters, dialogue, conflicts, and the theme. Last week we went through the given circumstances, we looked at the background story, we looked at plots. And so today we're going to look at the other aspects of the play that would bring it all together and give us a full picture of what the play is really about. I had decided to tell the story somewhere in the middle of the lecture. I'm wondering, okay, yeah, I think I'll do that. So I'll just begin with a discussion about what characters are and the various dimensions of a character before we dive into the full story, because last week I gave you the synopsis of the play. And so today I'll give you the full story so that we have a bigger picture of what the story is about. All right, so let's get started. All right, so for character, we'll be looking at the bone structure of a character by considering the 3 dimensions. That is the physiology, the sociology, and the psychology of a character. We'll look at who the pivotal character is, and then we'll examine complexity. What is complexity? When we say a character is complex, what does it mean? All right, so basically from our discussions right from the beginning, we have spoken about who characters are or who a character is. And we know that characters are the persons in the dramatic action. Sometimes they could be animals or things that have been given human attributes. But then characters are considered persons capable of making certain moral choices. And those choices and the pattern of their actions within the play or film or short story is what helps us to define who they are. If they make good choices, we say, oh, this person is a good person. If they make bad choices, we say this person is a bad person, and so on and so forth. And so it is based on certain things that the characters do repeatedly. In one scene, the person says one thing. In another scene, the person says the opposite. And then it keeps on, and we form opinions about them through that process. Like I always tell you, the worlds of plays are constructed to mimic our own world in society. And so when you are reading plays, you should try to look at those plays, the characters, their circumstances in relation to your own, and you will find parallels within your own world. And that would help you to truly appreciate the circumstances the characters find themselves in. And as we are learning about characters, and we know that they are modeled after human beings, that is why we are able to even be familiar with certain things they do. Sometimes you can say, this person is behaving like someone I know. Okay. As we are learning about characters and knowing that plays mimic life, we are also learning to gain better understanding about people and how to be better judges of character. So that you don't just say, oh, this person is rude. You meet the person, the first time you say this person is rude, this person is this person is that, without knowing why. Of course, it is not always that you get the opportunity to even find out why. Sometimes you just meet somebody for the first time and briefly, and you form your opinion about the person, and you might never even have the chance to see the person again. But unfortunately, we carry the same attitude to people we encounter all the time. We don't spend enough time to look beyond what we see. And so we quickly form opinions about people, so because it's easier. If you really want to delve in and know why the people are being rude, the people are being impolite, the person is just impatient with everybody, and you just say that is how the person is, there is always a reason. Our circumstances shape who we become. And if somebody has become something, it means that there are causes to those effects in the person's life. Okay. And so when we are considering characters, we have to look at them beyond what we see on the surface to find out why. Okay. And so that is why we'll be looking at the dimensions of a character. Now, every object has 3 dimensions. You have depth, you have height, you have width. Okay. But then for human beings, there is an additional 3 dimensions. You have the physiology, what makes the physical, person. And then there is the sociological aspect, which is the person's relationality, or how the person relates with others within society, the person's position and all that. And then there is the psychological aspect as well. So when you see somebody, oh, you have seen the person's physicality or physiology. And then if you are able to have the opportunity, sometimes, just knowing that the person is a human being tells you that, oh, the person must have parents or must have had parents. Okay. But delving deeper will help you to know who those parents are or where, their status in society, whether the person has siblings, whether the person has friends, whether the person is a Christian or Muslim. Like, all of these things form part of the person's sociology. And then the person's physiology and sociology come together to create the person's psychology. That is the person's outlook towards life, the person's motivation, what the person believes he or she can do or cannot do, and the person's self-image. Okay. And without knowledge of these 3 dimensions, it is practically impossible to fully appraise a human being. Are you following so far?
Yes, please, madam, we are.
Okay.
Yes, madam.
Great. So we are looking at the physiological aspects. Normally, when you see somebody, it is the very first thing you see, the physical makeup. Okay. And sometimes, like I have said already, we just look at that and pass judgment without, going further to understand the why. Okay. And the way we look has a very serious effect on the kind of psychology we develop, because it creates our self-image. You are born into a society, people start telling you, oh, you are too short. Oh, you are too short. And then you have this image in your mind, I'm a short person. Okay. And then it has other consequences, because they tell you, oh, within this society, it is only people who are tall who can do this. It is only people who are tall who can do that. And so you are forming opinions about yourself and what you can do. And you can develop even inferiority complex or superiority complex, because you've been told, oh, you are so pretty. And then you develop a certain air of arrogance around you. Or you are told that, oh, you are not good looking. And then you have this inferiority complex in you. And the physical is the very first thing we encounter when we see somebody. Okay. And it is not a very good basis upon which to judge people, even though it is the first thing we encounter. And so a person's physiology is made up of the person's sex, age, height, weight, color of hair, eyes, skin, the person's posture, whether the person is good looking, whether the person is overweight, neat, or untidy, pleasant, the shape of the person's face, like whether the person has any deformities or abnormalities or any birthmark on their face, whether the person has a sickness like Dr. Rank, whether the person has inherited certain things that have given the person the kind of physiology he or she has. All of these things are things we see right away when you meet somebody. And we experience that. When you see your friends, I mean, there are so many things you can say just by looking at them. And also based on opinions we have formed and our trainings about what certain prejudices about what is ideal, what is not. So when we see people's physicality or physiology, we are quick to just judge this person, oh, as this or as that and all that. It is the first thing we see, but it is not a good basis upon which to judge people or discriminate against people just by looking at their physiology. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, madam.
So we move on to the sociological aspects. Human beings are relational beings. Nobody just drops from above. We are not like seeds that, are pollinated by, things in the environment, such as wind, animals, and all that. And then through nature's own doing, it rains and, it falls on the seed, which is maybe in a fertile soil, and then it grows. It is nurtured by the environment. No. Human beings, we are very relational and we come through other human beings. Okay. And when we come through other human beings, those human beings live within a society that is often structured in a certain way. And so our sociological aspect is made up of, our parents. Who are our parents? Which class do we belong to? Do we belong to the lower class, middle class, upper class? What type of work do we do within the society? What is our income level? What organizations do we belong to? What is our level of education and all that? And you can even go further to look at other generations of the family, whether even the parents, whether they were rich or poor, maybe they had certain habits or certain vices, like Torvald accusing Nora of inheriting certain bad things from her father. Okay. And whether, I mean, the character is married or not, the person's religion, nationality, all of these form parts of the person's sociology. Hobbies, political affiliations, the person's place within the family, the society, whether the person belongs to certain clubs, all of these are parts of who we are sociologically. So if I ask you, sociologically speaking, who are you? You can begin by talking about, oh, I was born into a middle-class family, my parents were this and all that. Or I have these, I mean, when I was growing up, I had a best friend, I mean, whom I've grown up with, and we are still friends. And, you know, my hobbies are this and that and that and that and that. I go to church here, or I fellowship with, you know, my fellow believers here. We do. So all of these things form part of who we are sociologically. And when you combine the physiological and the sociological, they come together to give us a sense of who we are psychologically. So we are constantly carrying all of these with us. Everything we have inherited. If it is a disease, you are carrying it with you, like the way Dr. Rank is carrying that disease he inherited from his father with him. And then if it is an opinion that society has about who you are, such as, oh, you are an unscrupulous human being who should not be tolerated. Nobody should have any associations with you. You are carrying it with you, and it is influencing how you see yourself. And so the psychological dimension is the product of the first two. And if you find somebody who is, you know, very ambitious, you can link it to how the person looks. You can link it to the person's background. Maybe the person comes from a poor family and the person is trying to climb the social ladder. If somebody is very temperamental, it could be a coping mechanism for being rejected for so many times in society, in life, because people just judge the book by its cover and all that. And so when you see people behaving in a certain way, you should always look at it as a combination of their physicality or physiology and sociology. Look at their backgrounds. Which family do you belong to? How were you raised? Were your parents ever there? Oh, what were your parents telling you? Imagine a child growing up in a family where the parents keep, you know, discriminating against the child and, you know, showing favoritism and all that. You find this particular person from childhood to adulthood would seek attention, would be seeking attention. And so it could be, first it will be from the parents, but then later when he or she leaves the home, the person would be seeking attention in relationships and other things. And so our physiology and sociology give birth to our psychology, our self-image, how we see ourselves determines what we think we are capable of doing in life or where we belong in life. And so the person's psychological aspect is made up of the person's moral standards, the person's sex life, the person's personal premise in terms of the person's values, okay, the person's ambitions, frustrations about life, disappointment, the person's temperament, whether the person is easygoing, pessimistic, choleric, or optimistic, whether the person has a very resigned attitude towards life. Imagine somebody who growing up has had everything. The person wouldn't have that drive for life to achieve things. And so all these have an effect on the person's psychology about life. The person can be very militant because that is how the person was raised, or the person was left to grow up in the streets by him or herself. Or you can have somebody who has this defeatist attitude towards life. And if the person has obsessions about certain things, or certain superstitions, or certain fears about life, you know that it is coming from the environment. It is coming from the person's background, the sociological aspect, and so on. And like I said, these two, the physiology and the sociology, come together to give you your sense of who you are and what you are capable of. Without that, it will be practically impossible for you to determine who you are. You don't come just, with your set of understanding about who you are. You are told who you are. You discover who you are through interactions with others. And so through all of these things, we gain a sense of self. This is who I am. Because mostly you have received validation from others, or somebody has told you, oh, you cannot do this, or you are not good at this. You are not good at this. They keep saying it. And then you come to believe it. And then you also start saying it. I'm not good at this. Sometimes without even trying. Because you tried that one time and you couldn't do it. And people formed opinions about you, about your talent, about what you are capable of, and they pass judgment. And then you also take it on and create a self-image, add it to your list of things you are capable of or things you are not capable of. And then you begin to define yourself by those. Okay. And so when a writer is creating characters, he or she brings together these dimensions in order to create believable characters. You have to know the character in every detail to be able to do justice to that character in every situation. Because then you wouldn't want to have unconvincing characters who are behaving in this way at one time, and then go and make a certain decision that is totally uncharacteristic of them. People will see the characters as, badly drawn or stuck or just unconvincing and dull. So when you find characters that are very convincing, characters that, make you feel their struggle, characters that you identify with, you know that they have dimensions, that these three dimensions have come together to make them very complex, to create the kind of character that is human-like, so that it is not just a stock character who is the same way right from the beginning to the very end. There is no growth, there's no development. As human beings, we may start off thinking a certain way about who we are, but there are certain things that we possess that, can give an indication of what we are capable of. And when we are given the right opportunity, those qualities store up, and then we are able to transform and grow. And so three-dimensional characters are capable of growth because they have depth. They are deep. We've been given their physiology, we've been given their social relations, and we've been given their psychology and their motivation. And their motivation checks out. You see how their motivation checks out along with their backgrounds. And so they make sense. Do you understand?
Yes.
Do you have any questions on the characters and dimensions? Do you, if you don't, let me know. If you do, let me know.
No, please.
No, madam.
So the dimensions are clear.
Yes, please.
All right. So we're going to have our story time. This is a full-length play, so the story is a bit long. Yes, so you know what to do. Well, because sometimes your networks are not very stable, so it can create a lot of noise. So I just want you to respond when I say once upon a time, and then we will move on into the story. So you just keep quiet and listen to the story till the very end, when you can give me your impressions, okay?
Okay,
Yes.
madam.
All right. So we are going to learn about the story of a woman who lived in a dollhouse. Once upon a time.
Time.
Okay.
Time.
It is Christmas Eve, and Nora enters her living room with lots of shopping. She is in such a happy mood. Enoch has raised his hand. Enoch, do you have a question? Hello, Enoch.
No, madam, it was a mistake. I was just trying to join in.
Oh, okay. All right. So you interrupted
Madam, was
our
a mistake.
You interrupted our storytelling session. What punishment should we give you? We were in the middle of a story.
Madam,
Okay.
please,
Minus
sorry.
15.
Minus
Madam,
50.
madam, let him continue for us.
I should let him continue the story. Enoch, are you ready to tell the story? Somebody said minus 15. All right. So let's start the story again. Once upon a time.
Time.
All right. It is Christmas Eve, and Nora enters her living room with lots of shopping. She is in such a happy mood. She tips the porter who carries her things in. She tells the maid to hide the Christmas tree until evening when it is decorated. Helma, her husband, shouts from his study asking if she's the one. She responds, nibbling on her macaroons, and hides them when he makes his way to the hall to see her. He is surprised at the shopping, calling her a spendthrift. She declares that it is the first Christmas that they haven't had to skimp because he has been promoted to the position of a bank manager. He warns her that his raise wouldn't come for 3 more months. She then said they can borrow to have the best Christmas, but he is very strict about borrowing. And he comes up with a hypothetical situation in which they borrow and spend on Christmas, but he has an accident and cannot work anymore. She begs him not to talk like that. Then the doorbell rings, and it turns out to be her old friend, Mrs. Lind, and Dr. Rank, a family friend. Doris Nate, stop disturbing us. Dr. Rank goes in to see her husband. She almost didn't recognize Mrs. Lind because it's been about 10 years since they last saw each other. She looks pale and tired. She traveled through the winter on a ship to escape her purposeless life. Her story is that she married a rich man to take care of her mother and brothers, but the man died 3 years ago and left her with nothing, not even a sense of loss. She has come to find work because her mother is dead, and her brothers have started working and are able to take care of themselves. She tells Nora about her life as a working woman and comments on how lucky Nora is not to know anything about real life and its struggles. Then Nora reveals a secret about how she borrowed money to save her husband's life 8 years ago and has been scraping and working odd jobs to pay off the debt without the knowledge of her husband. Mrs. Lind is very surprised that Nora has had to bear such a burden. They both find pride and joy in working to take care of those they love, even though in the case of Nora, she's had to keep it a secret because her husband's masculine pride would never allow him to be in her debt. As they speak, there was a knock at the door, and it turns out to be Krogstad, the bank clerk and lawyer who loaned her the money 8 years ago. He came to see her husband. Upon hearing his voice, Christine starts and turns towards the window. Dr. Rank leaves her husband's office and joins the ladies and talks about Krogstad's unscrupulous character. Mrs. Lind is of the belief that such people as Krogstad deserve help rather than being thrown out into the cold. Nora suddenly realizes that Helma now has the power over all those at the bank, including Krogstad, and she's so excited. She brings out macaroons, which are considered contraband in her home, and shares it with Rank and Christine, Mrs. Lind. She gets Helma to agree to give Christine a job at the bank. Christine is the same as Mrs. Lind. So if I use them interchangeably, you know by now that they are the same person. Helma, Rank, and Christine leave, as Christine needed to get a place to stay. Just then, the kids arrive with the nurse. Nora plays a game of hide and seek with the kids until Krogstad re-enters her living room through the unlocked door. He blackmails her by revealing that he knew she forged her father's signature when she came for the loan 8 years ago. He gives her an ultimatum to use her influence to get her husband to retain him at the bank, or he'll reveal her secret. She's now distraught. She begins to embroider, but throws it away, and then calls the maid to bring the Christmas tree for her to decorate. Her husband returns with work and inquires if anyone came while he was away. When she said no, he revealed that he had seen Krogstad leaving through the front door and that he knows he had come to get her to convince him not to fire him. He tells her that Krogstad committed forgery several times and used crooked means to stay out of jail, making him a morally corrupt human being, and that behavior such as his corrupts not only he himself, but his children as well. He even goes further to claim that in his experience as a lawyer, most morally corrupt human beings come from a home where their mothers are chronic liars because the children spend most of their time with the mothers. Can you imagine that? He made her promise never to plead Krogstad's case again. In her distress, she begs him to choose a costume for her to wear to the costume party taking place in 2 days, at which she will be performing the Tarantella dance. He promised to help her. She's now left with her world turned upside down. So by the end of the first act, Nora's life, which at the beginning was like perfect, now has turned upside down. And we move into Act 2. Nora is distressed at the turn of events and even desperate. Mrs. Lind visits and promises to help her with the Tarantella costume. She inquires about the strange relationship she has observed between Nora and Dr. Rank and suspects he may be the rich man who may have loaned Nora the money. But Nora assures her she would never do something like that. Besides, at the time, Dr. Rank hadn't even inherited the fortune he got from his father. Nora asks her to go to the maid's room to work on the costume, and that Torvald, her husband, doesn't like all those things in the living room. Her husband comes home with some work, having gone to the bank already. Nora begs him to focus only on her and help her practice. She takes advantage of their being together to ask that he reconsiders his decision regarding Krogstad. She expresses fear that he might put something in the newspaper that may ruin them. Her husband figures her fear is coming from her father's experience with the newspaper reports that nearly ruined his reputation in the past. He assures her that his reputation is beyond reproach and that she has nothing to fear. Her insistence even angers him the more, which prompts him to give the dismissal letter to the maid to post to Krogstad without delay. Nora is distressed. He tells her everybody knows at work that he has decided to sack Krogstad because he calls him by his first name, and that will never do. Plus, he doesn't want those people at work to have the impression that his wife has influence over him. Dr. Rank comes to see Helma, but she keeps him briefly with the intention of asking him for money to repay the debt. But she changes her mind when he confesses his love for her. Can you imagine her husband's best friend confessing love for her? He tells her he will do anything for her, but she doesn't tell him anything. She confesses that she enjoys his company more than her husband's because he doesn't try to improve her. He is her friend. He tells her he's waiting for one final confirmation of his deterioration due to tuberculosis of the spine, which he inherited from his father. He tells her to expect a calling card with a black cross on it if the worst should happen, and to keep her husband from his sick room. While she talks to Rank, the maid brings her a calling card from Krogstad. He comes to tell her about his plan to reveal everything to her husband so that he can get her husband to create a position for him at the bank. He blames her husband for forcing him to go back to his crooked ways. He intends to blackmail him in order to take over his power at the bank. He warns Nora that even if she tries to commit suicide, it will be of no use because her husband will still be indebted to him and would want to do anything to save her reputation and his own. He leaves the letter in the mailbox in which he explains everything Nora has done. She is now distressed beyond comprehension. As she ponders her fate, Christine comes to find her and she reveals to Christine that Krogstad is the one who lent her the money to take care of her husband. And now he has left a letter in the mailbox to reveal everything. ruining the life she has worked so hard to build. Mrs. Lind leaves to talk to Krogstad, taxing Nora to stall her husband and prevent him from opening the mailbox. Nora tries to convince her husband to help her practice the tarantella dance. She dances wildly to the surprise of all present. Her hair is loose. Her husband stops the performance and promises to help her practice and gets ready for the performance the next night. She pretends to have forgotten everything she knows about the dance. He agrees to put everything away until after her tarantella performance the next night. The maid comes to announce that dinner is ready. Nora is happy. She asks the maid to serve champagne and lots of macaroons at dinner. Mrs. Lind returns shortly and is also surprised to find Nora with her hair loose over her shoulders. She asks Christine to help her fix her hair, and as they move away, Christine tells her that Krogstad has left town till the next day, so she has left him a note that he should come and see her when he returns. She tells Christine to not try and do anything at this point, and that she's now waiting for the miracle. Christine doesn't understand what it is that Nora is expecting. She tells Christine to go and join the others for dinner and that she will join her soon. Nora counts the 31 hours until the end of her life. Helma calls for her and she joins them at dinner. At the end of Act 2, we know that there's something she's expecting. She's expecting a miracle, but we don't know what that miracle is yet. And then we enter into Act 3. While the Helmers attend the masquerade party upstairs, Mrs. Lind anxiously, if your microphone is on, mute yourself. Faith Amoa, mute yourself. While the Helmers attend the masquerade party upstairs, Mrs. Lind anxiously waits for Krogstad, who has just returned from his trip out of town. She tells him that her reason for returning to town is so they could take off where they left off in their relationship. She explained that she had to sacrifice her happiness by marrying a rich person so her mother and two brothers could be taken care of. At the time, Krogstad was just starting out and their needs could not wait for him. Now she wants to start a new life with him, regardless of his bad reputation, so she can take care of his children. When he realizes that she's being sincere, he is overjoyed and he abandons his idea to blackmail Nora and her husband. He offers to demand his letter back, unopened, but she's convinced that it is better for Nora's husband to find out the truth so that the marriage can be free of the lies that have plagued them over the years. She tells him to wait at the corner so he can take her home upon hearing Nora and her husband's footsteps. Nora is dragged in by her husband because she didn't want to come down to their home at the party. They find Christine waiting in the living room to see Nora's costume. Torvald, her husband, could not wait for Christine to leave. When she leaves, Dr. Rank also comes in for a cigar and some small talk. And he talks about his death. She tells Helma to go and open his mail. Now there is a shift here because all this while she's been trying to prevent him from opening his mail. Now she tells him to go and open his mail because she's expecting the miracle to happen. He finds the 2 calling cards with a black cross on them, and Nora confirms to him that Dr. Rank is shutting himself in to die. She tells him to go ahead and open his mail while she goes to sleep. She makes her way across the hall with the intention of leaving her home whilst her husband opens the mail. But as she was moving out, he barges out of his office to confront her about Krogstad's letter. She confirms to him that it is true. He gets hysterical and he tells her she has ruined his life and that she is morally corrupt and unfit to be the mother of their children. He goes further to tell her their relationship is done. They will live together, but there will be nothing between them. He resigned himself to be at the mercy of Krogstad and blames her for ruining his life. Then the maid brought a letter for Nora from Krogstad whilst he was in his rage. And so he takes the letter from the maid and opens it. In the letter, Krogstad states that he regrets his actions and asks for her forgiveness. He returned the note that ties her to him in debt. Helma quickly tears up the letter plus the note and burns them in the fireplace, that it's all done, it's all over. He's overjoyed, and he kept saying that he's saved from this horrible situation. And Nora asked him, what about her? And he says, of course, you're also saved. And that they are all safe now and things can return to normal. And that he has forgiven her. Nora suddenly realizes he is not the man she thought he was. She thought he would make good his declarations to save her in her times of trouble. But that miracle didn't happen. He told her a man would never sacrifice his honor for love. And she replies that many women do that all the time. And indeed, that is what she did to save his life 8 years ago and continues to do to pay off the debt. But when it came down to it, he chose his honor and what others would think of him over her. With this knowledge, she decides to leave him and their children. As she leaves, she slams the door on her way out. The end.
Thanks be to God.
It is a very long story because it's a full-length play. And you see how, from our discussion last week about plot, they build upon each other. Because it's a linear plot and it's a complex plot, the situations are tightly woven together, that each event leads to the next. Each one leads to the next. And you can link it back to the one that came before. And so we have looked at the full story. And so for us to examine the characters, it will now make sense when we are discussing the characters steeped within their story, because we have already looked at their given circumstances, the social context that they lived in, some of the social standards and rules. We know that what she has done was a huge problem and it had to be kept a secret because of the kind of society they lived in. And Henrik Ibsen was notorious for exposing social problems on stage. At the time, he had to leave Norway, his home country, and go and live elsewhere for about 27 years to be able to properly criticize them. Because, I mean, he didn't want to risk censorship. And so he wrote most of these politically charged social problem plays elsewhere. And so most of his plays treated taboo subjects that provoked theater goers to push for social reforms. And A Doll's House is one of such plays that made great impact on the struggle for women's emancipation in the late 19th century into the early 20th century. And because of how strong the play is and its effectiveness at calling attention to what is wrong with society, there were several actresses who wouldn't play Nora at the time because they see themselves as the kind of women who would never leave their children or husbands behind. Okay. And so let's look at Nora's character. Because at the time they married early, maybe she married between the ages of 16 to 18. So we can say that Nora is about, maybe she's within her mid-20s to early 30s. Okay, but definitely maybe late 20s. And we know from the play that she's beautiful. She has flowing hair, which she normally ties up, and that is why it comes loose when she danced wildly. And we know she's healthy because there is no mention of any disease she's suffering. And she's very active. She plays with her children. She runs around the room with her children and she dances as well. So we know that she's physically active. And her sociological dimension. We know that, I mean, nothing was said about her mother. She was raised by Anne-Marie, who is now raising her children. She was trained by her father because nothing was said about the mother. And she also talks about how all the opinions she has about life were given to her by her father. And because no siblings are mentioned, we can assume that she's an only child. She belongs to the educated middle class. She's married, she has 3 children, and she secretly works all jobs to pay off her debts. And she's friends with Christine and Dr. Rank. So this is what forms her sociological aspect. And then in terms of her psychological aspect, it is often good to begin with the character's motivation. And so what is her motivation here? To save her husband's masculine pride by keeping the secret of how she saved his life. Okay. So right from the beginning, she has this sense of, joy. She said what she does by working to pay off debt makes her feel like she's a man. Because within that society, it is the men who normally work to take care of the family. The women are confined to the domestic sphere and all that. If you are a married woman, it is the man who takes care of you. She doesn't have to work, but by doing that secretly, she feels like she's almost like a man. We can say she's stubborn because the husband has declared that she shouldn't eat something, and we know she eats it and she hides it. She's manipulative. She can manipulate the husband to do things she wants by playing tricks here and there, and she's a liar and a pretender because she has been pretending all this while to be weak, to be somebody who needs direction and all that, when she knows exactly what she wants, when she's able to do certain things in secret. So she pretends with him to be this all innocent girl who doesn't know anything. But she's very hardworking, she's smart, she's a rule breaker. To go and forge a signature, just shows that she has no regard for the law, really. Because in the society, this is what is done, this is what is proper. But she looks at it and realizes that if she's going to go through the proper way, her husband might die. So she decides to break the rules. And she's kind. See how she got her husband to get her friend a job. Because, the friend has come back to town. She's a kind person. She's selfless. because she has sacrificed herself for her husband. All this while, look at all the things she's been going through just to save her husband's ego. First, to save his life, and then to save his ego. Her self-awareness comes towards the end, because all this while she's been operating with the understanding that what she's doing for the husband, he will do for her when the time comes. Only for her to finally realize something. It's like in the end, she became self-aware. She began to question her own mind. These thoughts I'm having, they don't belong to me. Who am I? What do I think? Now it is time for me to think for myself and live for myself. I need to discover who I am. And so she gains that self-awareness about her position within the society and chose that, I mean, she would rather have it differently. And so moving on from comfort, Amwa. If you are not talking to me, if you are not asking me, just mute yourself. Okay, comfort, Amwa, mute yourself. All right. So let's look at Torvald, Nora's husband. In terms of his physiology, we don't really get much about him. We know that, yeah, he's a workaholic, but that is linked to his sociology. But if he's also a workaholic, in the past, he worked himself to sickness. That is why Nora had to take him to Italy to get well. So looking at the fact that he relates with Nora almost like, in a way that is fatherly. It's like he's her father. So it just gives you a sense that there is some considerable age difference between them. So let's just roughly say 10 years difference between them. So we can just peg Helma at 35 to 45 years old. He's healthy. In terms of his facial expression, we can say he has a serious look because, he takes himself too seriously. And you can see it with the middle class respectability mask he wore during the masquerade party. His sociological aspects, we know he's a father and he's a husband. He has 3 children. He's a lawyer. Now he has been promoted to bank manager in terms of his occupation. He has a friend. His only friend is Dr. Rank, and they could stay there in his study for hours talking. And then he also has a boss-employees relationship because he has taken over the bank as manager. And then his psychological aspects. We know that his motivation is to maintain a good standing in the eyes of society, maintaining that middle class respectability, and he would sacrifice anything for that. And you can see, even though he professes love and affection for Nora, that's something he would never sacrifice for her. He has this controlling and overbearing character within the home. Nora tells us even the living room is designed to his taste. So he wants to have a hand in everything, even though he's the one who goes out there to work in the world of commerce. In the home, that is supposed to be the domain of the woman too. He's overbearing and he has control over everything there too. And so he has that kind of character. And because of that, we can just link it to his desire to have everything perfect in the eyes of society. Okay. And he thinks very little of his wife's intellect. There was a point when Nora was asking Dr. Rank if there was anything in the medical journal. And he was like, what does little Nora know about science? Okay. So this is also something that gives us an idea of how he values her intellect as a woman. But it is very easy to judge Helma harshly. We have to accord him a certain level of sympathy when we are examining his character. Because you remember, most of you said you have seen Bridgerton, right? Hello?
Madam, no, please.
Yes, madam.
So,
No, madam.
how many of you have seen Bridgerton? The last time we spoke, a few of you said you have seen Bridgerton. And
We have seen it.
okay, it sounded a lot like there were more of you. Yeah. You saw how the men or the young men are raised to take over their
Yes.
father's estates, and they are supposed to take certain responsibility, and the society has been structured so that you behave in a certain way in order to remain in good standing, to the point that Simon and Anthony were willing to go into a duel. And they don't care if one of them dies because Simon had dishonored Anthony's sister. And so they had these rules there. They are all raised with those set standards in mind. And so all this while he thinks he's doing what is right based on how he has been brought up, based on what he thinks is right. And so because of that kind of upbringing, he's incapable of seeing things any other way. And so it is important that that is why I was telling you about the importance of the dimensions, that you need to dig deep. You need to look at the society. If you don't do that, it is easy to say, oh, this person is horrible. Look at all the things she has done for you, and look at the way you have treated her. That is true, but also let's look at the other side as well. What caused him to take that stance? What kind of society does he live in? What kind of society creates a man like Torvald Helmer? That is what will help you to gain a deeper understanding of this character and his behavior. And it is important for those of you who have seen Bridgerton, you just have to look at that context and the expectations that are placed on the men and the women. So when you are judging them, you look at it and you realize that the society exerts a very strong influence on the characters, trying to determine how they behave, what they should do, what is right and what is not. And for the characters that do not have self-realization and self-awareness, they keep operating to the dictates of society, even to the point of losing themselves. And that is what Nora was able to break free from by the end of the play. Do you have any questions on the characters I've treated so far before I move to dialogue? Okay, I'm moving on. You can put your questions down. When we get to the end, you can ask. Because it is a realistic play, realistic plays are plays that are designed to look like real life. Okay. And so the language or the dialogue has to feel like the way we have our conversation every day. Okay. And so with the realistic paradigm, it is like something is happening in somebody's living room, and those of us reading or watching are peeking through a keyhole to eavesdrop on what they are doing. And so they operate, they live their normal lives and do things they do normally without calling any attention to what they are doing. Okay. And so that is why the conversation is colloquial. The language is conversational. I'm talking to my wife, I talk to her the way I talk to her all the time. I'm talking to my husband, I talk to him the way I talk to him all the time. Okay. There's nothing special about the language. Okay. But there is some figurative use of language in some instances, like the symbolism that Dr. Rank employs when he was discussing his death. He said, next masquerade, I am going to be invisible. And Nora says, that's a funny idea. And then he said, they say there is a hat, black, huge. Have you never heard of that hat that makes you invisible? You put it on and then no one on earth can see you. So he's speaking in a metaphorical way, but then he's talking about his death. Okay, so even though the language is conversational, you find, these occasional symbolisms and metaphorical or figurative use of language there. All right, so let's look at the conflict. Conflict, generally, we know is a struggle between two opposing forces, okay? And you can either have a person against another person, or a person against him or herself, a person against nature, something bigger than him or herself, a person against society, often comes through, sometimes through another person, and all that. And so we can talk about Nora's internal conflicts, because all this while she's been living a lie, she's been struggling within herself, because she wants to live with her husband in an honest way, but she knows she's keeping a big secret from him. And she knows that she wants to finish paying the debt quickly so that that conflict will just disappear within her. But as it is, she has been living with that conflict for 8 years. And so also battling within herself to keep the secret. When the secret is threatened, that battle as to whether to end her life or to live, thinking about the cold, icy lake, which eventually Krogstad discourages her from doing it, because she herself also says she doesn't have the courage to do it. And Nora and Krogstad, where Krogstad forces her to do something she would rather not do, that is going to convince her husband to give him his job back. And then Nora trying to convince her husband to do something he would rather not do, that is maintaining Krogstad at the bank. And then there is the huge conflict that happens in the end, Nora and Torvald, where he's enraged by what she has done and she is so disappointed by his reaction. And then finally, when he feels everything is over, she is at the opposite end. I'm leaving, and she leaves. Okay, so you find these conflicts in the play, justifying the characters' motivations at the end of the day. All right, so when you look at the characters, their actions in the play all come together to prove the goal of the play or the idea of the play. They don't just act, in an uncoordinated manner. Everything is coordinated towards saying something the playwright wants to say at the end of the day. And so the characters must be strong enough to prove the premise or the idea of the play without forcing it. And so last week when we discussed the premise, we said that living a life of pretense is like building castles in the sun. Okay. And we also spoke about the fact that there is no greater knowledge than self-knowledge. And we also said sacrifice suggests reciprocity. When you sacrifice for someone, there is that expectation that when the time comes, I mean, the person would do something like that for you as well. But you see how each of these can be explained by the play. Because Nora pretended and kept a secret and didn't really realize who she is by being open enough to show her strength and what she has been doing for the family as well, and pretending to be that songbird and the skylark and all that, built a certain kind of lie in her life as a married woman. And it is bound to just come crashing. Because at the end of the day, the lies she was building was creating more lies around her. And it turns out her husband was also just lying about his ability to save her when she's in trouble and everything. And it all comes crashing down. And in the end, what she does tells us something about the importance of knowing things for yourself, knowing who you are, knowing what you believe in, rather than what has been passed on to you. Like you look around and every opinion you have is opinion that someone else has expressed. What do you know? Evans, Jesse, mute yourself. What do you know? What have you learned in your own life? What opinions have you formed for yourself based on your own observations, based on your own experience? That is really important. If not, you are living other people's lives rather than yours. And I've explained the sacrifice suggests reciprocity. Because of all the sacrifice that she has sacrificed for him over the years, there was that expectation of reciprocity when the time comes, you see. So it's like the miracle she was expecting. But also the fact that she terms it the miracle tells you something about the context, because men never do those things within that context. They would rather save their honor. They would rather, because they've been raised to think that honor is above everything, and they would rather lose their lives than do anything like that. All right. But when you read this play, the most obvious theme that comes up is a happy marriage built on dishonesty is a disaster waiting to happen. Right at the beginning, there was balance. It was a state of balance. Oh, everything is happy, right? Shopping, it's Christmas, they are happy, her husband has gained promotion. But because there's so much lies, it all comes crashing in the end. But the theme that I would want to focus on in this lecture is self-awareness leads to freedom. Self-awareness leads to freedom. And this is really important. Like I always tell you, when we read plays, we try to extract something for ourselves, because plays are not just plays. Plays are based on years of observation about life. And so we don't have to live through these in order to learn from them. We can use the lives of characters, their actions, their motivations, eventually their decisions, and the consequences that those decisions bring about. We can learn from them. And so what I want you to understand is that it is important to question the source of your perceptions and knowledge about life in order to figure things out for yourself based on values and tried and tested principles about life. You don't just take things on because that is the popular opinion. Oh, that is what society says it is good. Something that is true today may change tomorrow because there is new understanding. But it is really important that as a human being, you learn to examine yourself. Examine yourself, examine what you know, examine your perceptions about life. And you should be open enough to embrace things that challenge your beliefs in a way that makes sense to you, rather than remaining with your own beliefs, no matter what, even when the truth stares you in the face. And so self-awareness, that is you realizing your place within society, you questioning your own mind and your own thinking about certain things, trying to judge its rightness or wrong, trying to determine things for yourself. And so you can see how Nora's understanding and perceptions about life, from what she said, comes from her father, her husband, and what the pastor tells her about religion and everything. But realization of the truth of her imprisonment by those beliefs in a context that leaves her no freedom to think and act for herself is what gave her freedom. She needed to realize things for herself because she does not understand why there will be a society in which laws are made so rigidly, to the point that if you do something to save somebody else's life because it has been deemed unlawful, you are supposed to be punished. Nobody's looking at the reason why you are doing it, because that is how the law operates. This is just an example, but it is saying something bigger than that, because of course that's how the law operates. Nobody cares about your reason for stealing. Nobody cares about your reason for committing other crimes. It is just that everybody has explanations for things, but the rule is don't do it. That's all. But here, Ibsen has used that to tell us something about the importance of questioning rules themselves, about the importance of figuring things out for ourselves. And so that is something we can really take away from this play. Self-awareness and learning to question the source of our perceptions and knowledge about life. Because it is not always that you find yourself in situations where people are making decisions and creating rules to favor you. No. Certain rules will be created to favor others. And if you don't learn to question them and ask for your own share in some of these things, you will be cheated. That is why there are workers' unions. You have companies making rules to serve themselves. And then there's the workers' union that is also questioning, oh, why is it that you will not give us, additional pay for this extra work we are doing? And then they are also questioning it, and so that they can also have something better for themselves. If you don't have this attitude where you are self-aware enough to look at your place within society or within an environment you find yourself in, then everything will be acting on you. Everything will be acting on you. And you wouldn't have that sense of, why is this happening? Is this the way it should happen? You begin to question things in order to have what is better for you. Does that make sense? Hello? Does that make
Yes, please, it does. Yeah.
Yes,
All right.
madam.
So this is where I end my lecture. Do you have any questions or contributions? Let's hear your voices now. I have spoken a lot. Let's hear your voices now. Okay, I have a hand up. Venice,
Yes, madam.
let's hear you.
Madam, please, what was the miracle Nora was talking about?
I've just spoken about that miracle right now. Were you listening?
And then maybe my network.
Did anybody hear what I said the miracle is? Did anybody hear what I said the miracle is? David,
Yes, please.
can you please explain it to Bernice?
Like the miracle she was expecting was she expected the Tovat to like pay her back like in kind for trying
Mm.
to save her life. So the miracle, how will I say it? We'll see the rock star
Yeah.
expected that he would not be too annoyed or would
Mm.
rather trade his honor for love.
That's it. That's it. Well done, David.
Thank you, madam.
Yes. The miracle was that she expected him to trade his honor for her because he had said countless times, oh, how I wish something were to happen to you so that I would save you. And I even mentioned that she called it a miracle because within that context and in that time, it is difficult for a man to trade his honor. And that is why in Bridgerton, they would rather kill each other. So, Bernice,
Yes, madam.
do you understand the miracle?
Yes, please. Thank you, madam.
Welcome. Yes, any more questions or contributions? I think we have really dissected this play and pieced it together to gain understanding on it. Do you understand this play?
Yes, madam.
Yes, madam.
And all these things I'm doing is to teach you how to do it. Do you feel that you are growing and gaining understanding of how to analyze plays and make sense of them?
Yes, please, especially today's lecture. How the sociology and the physiology lead to the psychology. I'm so grateful for that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Priscilla. I'm happy to hear
Welcome.
that. I'm happy to hear that. Because like I told you right at the beginning, I want you to become experts at, analyzing plays and knowing the technical terms. If you are talking about a character and you are bringing about all these dimensions, I mean, it just shows that you are acquiring the kind of knowledge necessary to be able to do the kind of work that is needed. Okay, so please don't, Magdalene,
Madam,
yes.
Madam, please, I want to know the reason behind the title "A Doll's House" because we haven't seen any doll anywhere. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
Magdalene, I'm going to send you to the play. There is this conversation right at the falling action. Okay, right at the
yes,
falling
madam.
action, where she was telling Torvald that her father had played with her like his doll, and now she's playing with the children like they are her dolls, right? That she's a played
Yes.
thing. Go back there and get the meaning. Next week I'll ask you, Magdalene.
Okay,
Next
okay,
week
madam.
I'll ask you, okay?
Yes, madam.
If I forget, please, somebody tell me. I'm going to write it here. Okay. I'm making
Okay,
a note.
madam. I
Ask,
will
ask,
tell you.
Priscilla. I'm giving you that job. Remind me, okay?
Okay,
All
madam. I
right.
will.
So Magdalene, go and do that homework. Okay.
Yes, madam. Yes,
All right.
madam.
Okay. Great. I don't see any other hand up. So I'll just leave you here. Go take good care of yourselves. Make sure you are going back to the videos to revise. Ruby AJ.
Good morning, madam.
Good morning.
Madam, please, I wanted to ask if you could extend the deadline for the individual assignments and the group work. It's a plea, please.
Individual and the group work.
Yes, please.
I can because I don't want it to enter into next week. We are doing a new play next week. So I can stretch it to say Monday, just Monday.
Okay.
Yes, madam. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, madam.
Welcome. I'll see you next week. Take good care of yourselves, okay?
Okay, you too, madam. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh.